Hi everyone, I'm making a quick video overview for your research paper number 2. This paper is a little different than the one that you did previously. Again, you're going to get a couple options, but I thought I would just show it to you and then explain it to you a little bit. The explanation's also in the module, of course, but sometimes it's nice to hear somebody say it. So, research paper number 2 is due at this, just like last time, it's going to be due at the same time as a midterm. And when you go find that module, oh, hopefully you can still see that. I'll check when I'm done making the video. When you go find that module, this is essentially what it's going to say. The research paper asks you to select some concepts that we've been looking at and explore them more deeply by doing more research. And you have the first option here, which is the historical timeline. So if you read the directions, this timeline builds on some of the work we've been doing the last couple weeks in class with the rhetorical shaping of gender. And what if a student was going to do this assignment, then they are going to create a timeline that includes some of the women's rights movements, like the most important events, some of the men's rights movements, the most important events, and then also some of the queer rights movements, and some of the most important events in all of those movements, and then attempts to draw some connections between those things. The connection piece is pretty important, and it can mean the difference a lot of difference in your score, because that's where you're trying to establish and explain to me that you understand how these things are interrelated. And if you look here, there's different ways that people have done this in the past. There's a Prezi option. These two are all mind mapping softwares. They're all free. I've seen really good ones on Prezi. I had an excellent one done on PowerPoint recently. The face-to-face students tend to do poster boards. In fact, that's what I encourage them to do. But the online students, that's not as easy of an option. But if you can come up with some other option, that is cool with me. I think Prezi is one of the easier ways to accomplish this task, but there's probably more than one way. And the key is to find something visual that you can both write on, add some description, and two, still connect some of those movements together, because hopefully as you're learning, they're like a call and an answer. One thing happens and then somebody responds to that positively or negatively. So I'm trying to get to see students if they can connect the dots, so to speak. So that's one option. If you don't like that idea, then you do the other option. The other option is this ethnographic experiment, where you would go back to the information on verbal and nonverbals and go people watch, actually. And then if you were going to do this assignment, you are going to go conduct your own mini study, and you would observe and analyze. So right there, ethnographic observation, analyze what you saw. And you would need to spend about 45 minutes to an hour observing a group of people. The kind of ideal locations are places where people might be doing gender, but also where it wouldn't be weird to observing them. So that might be like a coffee shop, a bookstore. The gym is actually a great place to do this, but people might find that weird if you're doing it at the gym. So keep that in mind. You have to be very, very subtle. A sporting event. I know I had to do something very similar, both as an undergrad and as a grad student. And I remember sitting one time out inside of an elevator and doing this. And it was really interesting because that elevator had a lot of traffic. And I observed some really interesting nonverbal behavior. And that's what you would be up to with this second task, or the second option. And what you're looking for here is number 2, observe people who present their presentation, and then see if you can connect, like, how are they doing gender with nonverbals? Is it their appearance? Are they taking up a lot of space? I know outside that elevator I saw a lot of stuff that had to do with haptics and touch, and some awkward interactions and some less awkward interactions, and I saw some people doing a lot. My findings in that 45 minutes I spent outside of that elevator would have been exactly in line with what Julia Wood has to say, that actual research, not just me sitting outside of the elevator, the kinds of gendered patterns, the women were more likely to yield space and the men were more likely to take up space. I know one time I actually rode up and down in the elevator, which people got caught onto, and that was kind of weird. But it was really fascinating to watch how men needed more space in the elevator and women were much more likely to get closer to each other or didn't need as much space. Like they might move apart, but they wouldn't move apart so drastically. And that's gendered, especially if it's a pattern. If that happens every time, that's pretty much gendered. I mean, it is gendered. So that would be what you were looking for. And then you would want to keep track of those interactions. And I mean, it's hard to gender a person. You're kind of guessing at that point. But I guess for the purposes of this activity, you almost have to guess. Or you could just write unclear. That could be, or unknown, or I don't want to guess on a particular person, because that would happen. Sometimes guessing would definitely lead you in the wrong track. And I don't want to encourage you to do that. But that would be how you would conduct this really non-scientific little experiment, and then you would write it up. So you would keep track of the number of times you saw somebody doing something masculine and or feminine, and categorize those interactions. You might keep some notes about what some of the specific behaviors were, and then you would see if the patterns fell into line with what you think with what you research tells us should. I'm also should happen anyway, and I'm also going to tell you that that's going to be generational. Somebody who's older is probably going to fall more in line with these patterns than somebody who is younger. That's research suggests that too. The younger generations they do this more subtly than people who are older. If you go at Wim, follow my dad around all day, or my mom, they're the same age, you would see some pretty clear gendered behavior that you might not see in somebody who's 18. It would probably be more subtle in somebody who's 18 on average. And then you would write all that up. And then there would be a peer review for either one. Now, the peer reviews with this particular assignment are going to be a little bit different because you might be reading something that's a lot different than what you worked on, because Canvas does assign those at random. But it worked out really well the last time I did this, the last couple times I've done this. So I think that it's definitely useful for students to go through that process. So if you have questions, contact me. And again, I just encourage you, if one of those sounds like a nightmare or a mess to you, do the other one. And if one of them sounds really cool, do that one. Or the one, like, there's one of these that I think I would do a lot better on than the other one. I would do the one that I think I'm going to get a higher score on. That's why I gave you options, so you wouldn't be trapped into those two things. Email me if you need help.